At first glance, Iran may seem like the victim. After all, just a few weeks ago, the United States carried out a highly secretive mission and, quite unexpectedly, attacked Iran, killing its supreme leader Ali Khamenei in the process. What received far less attention at first, however, is the fact that the Iranian government has been unbelievably cruel for years. In fact, it is far more brutal than what people are used to seeing in other Muslim-majority countries. So in this video, we want to give you an overview of the brutal things that, unbelievably, are still completely normal in Iran, even in 2026. It is going to be shocking, but also eye-opening. Let's begin right away with a point that fundamentally sets Iran apart from states like the United Arab Emirates, where strict laws and harsh punishments are also well known. When people travel to a foreign country as tourists, they generally assume that as long as they follow the law, they will be safe. In Iran, however, that is not the case. The regime has turned the systematic kidnapping of Western tourists and dual nationals into an official and highly effective business model. What that means is this: foreigners are suddenly arrested at the airport or in their hotel, and often disappear into solitary confinement for months. The vague standard accusation is almost always espionage. Swedish EU diplomat Johan Floderus, for example, ended up in prison this way in 2022 after simply wanting to take a vacation in Iran and remained there for an unbelievable 790 days, roughly 2 years and 2 months. The trial against him was pure theatre, with prosecutors even demanding the death penalty. In reality, the regime had imprisoned him only to exchange him for Hamid Nouri, an Iranian citizen who had been sentenced to life in prison in Sweden for mass war crimes committed in 1988. In June 2024, that cynical prisoner swap was finally carried out, and the Iranian government's plan worked. That this tactic is still being used in 2026 is shown, for example, by the case of the British couple Craig and Lindsay Foreman. The two 53-year-olds entered Iran in early January 2025 with valid visas and a licensed guide for a motorcycle tour. They were arrested and sentenced in a fast-track trial to 10 years in prison, where they are still being held until the regime finds a use for them. The death penalty for so-called moral crimes is also something that is completely unimaginable in most countries in 2026. But in Iran, what sounds like the darkest Middle Ages is still entirely normal. The Iranian Penal Code really does punish alleged crimes against God, and that includes, for example, any sexual relationship outside of marriage. For unmarried people, the law mandates 100 lashes. It is a punishment that causes severe physical trauma. Anyone caught a fourth time is then sentenced to death by hanging. Even more unbelievable is the legal penalty for married people who commit adultery. In those cases, the law explicitly prescribes death by stoning. Men are buried up to the waist in a pit in the ground, while women are buried up to the chest, leaving them almost unable to move. In fact, the law even specifies the size of the stones for the executioners. They must not be so large that they kill immediately, but they also must not be too small. The point under the law is to prolong the victim's suffering and death for as long as possible. In general, Iran is breaking all records when it comes to executions. In 2024, Amnesty International documented more than 1,000 executions. In 2025, the situation escalated dramatically. Human rights organizations counted between 1,922 and 2,200 executions. That is a shocking increase of nearly 100%, and the highest figure in 37 years. In December 2025 alone, 376 people were executed, about half of them under the pretext of drug offenses, something the regime often uses to target ethnic minorities it wants to eliminate without having to bring political charges. While other countries that still use the death penalty at least carry out executions at designated facilities, hangings in Iran are often carried out in public from construction cranes. There is no trapdoor designed to cause a quick neck break. Instead, the noose is placed around the victim's neck, and the crane slowly lifts them into the air, causing a drawn-out and agonizing death by suffocation that lasts several minutes. The public is forced to watch. Even people who are not sentenced to death on absurd or completely fabricated grounds still have every reason to fear Iran's penal code. Besides the punishments already mentioned, it also provides for other extreme penalties that constitute a blatant violation of the International UN Convention Against Torture. For example, even a first act of theft, even if it is committed out of hunger, can result in the complete amputation of 4 fingers from the right hand. Only the thumb and the palm are left. Equally shocking is the so-called Qisas principle, literally an eye for an eye. If someone injures another person's eye during an argument, courts in Tehran routinely order the offender to be deliberately blinded. The eye is then either removed in the presence of officials or burned with chemicals. The fact that women in Iran are subjected to extreme oppression probably does not come as a surprise to you. What is shocking, however, is how much the Iranian regime has intensified this in recent years. The so-called hijab and chastity law and the Noor plan proclaimed by Ayatollah Khamenei in 2024 criminalize women on an unprecedented level. A woman who merely refuses to cover her hair faces not just prison. The state freezes bank accounts, confiscates vehicles, imposes travel bans, and excludes women from universities and hospitals. This near-total lack of rights in both public and private life is also reflected in the dramatic rise in femicides, the killing of women, which increased by an alarming 60% in the first half of 2024 and has now reached a record high. As medieval as everything mentioned so far may sound, the Iranian state in 2026 is also using cutting-edge technology and no longer relies only on the morality police to make women's lives miserable. The UN only recently documented that special surveillance drones are flying over parks and beaches. At universities like Amir Kabir University in Tehran, facial recognition systems at the entrance gates identify female students without headscarves in order to expel them automatically. But perhaps the most shocking example is the Neza app. Neza means observer or supervisor in Persian, and the name says it all. With it, loyal citizens, militias, and fanatics can easily use their smartphones to upload photos, locations, and license plate numbers in real time of women who are allegedly wearing the hijab incorrectly. Article 59 of Iranian law even grants these informants complete immunity for violent attacks on the women they catch, while Article 60 threatens civilians who step in and want to protect women with prison sentences. What definitely sets Iran apart from many other unjust states when it comes to cruelty is the forced disappearance of children and the execution of minors. No other country in the world is still sentencing as many minors to death in 2026. Under Islamic criminal law, full criminal responsibility begins at the age of 9 for girls and 15 for boys. Because international law prohibits the execution of minors, Iran uses a trick. The regime simply keeps children and teenagers who have been sentenced to death in prison until they reach adulthood. Only then is the sentence carried out. After all of that, it probably will not surprise you that sexual minorities are also criminalized in Iran. While the world is becoming more open in 2026, simply belonging to the LGBTQ+ community in Iran often means death. The regime tolerates no deviation from its worldview and tries to literally erase queer identities from society. According to the Islamic Penal Code, consensual homosexual acts between adult men automatically carry the death penalty. Female homosexuality is also punished harshly. At first, the penalty is 100 brutal lashes, but repeat offenses can also lead to the gallows. Given all these absurd laws, it is hardly surprising that court proceedings in Iran are a complete joke as well. Radical judges often hand down the harshest punishments in just a few minutes. They apply even their own laws only when it suits them, and often do not even bother trying to find actual evidence. On the contrary, the accused are often tortured until they confess to crimes they never committed. The most grotesque part of all this is the televised public confessions. People visibly broken by pain are forced to read absurd scripts in front of state television cameras, denounce themselves, and confess to international conspiracies. These coerced videos then serve as the only legal basis for hanging them from a crane. If you found this video interesting, leave a like and subscribe. Bye, and see you next time.